Psalms chapter 78, Maschil of Asaph. Listen, my people, to my teachings, incline your ears to the words I speak. I will speak in parables, I will share ancient wisdom. What we have heard and known, and what our fathers have told us. We will not hide these truths from our children, but instead, we will declare to the next generation the praises of the Lord, His strength, and the marvelous works He has done. For He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, commanding our forefathers to pass these teachings to their children, so that the coming generation may know them, the children to be born, and they, in turn, will declare them to their own offspring. In this way, they may place their trust in God, remember His works, and keep His commandments. But they should not be like their forefathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, whose hearts were not steadfast with God. The Ephraimites, though armed and carrying bows, turned back on the day of battle. They did not keep God's covenant, and refused to walk in His ways. They forgot His marvelous works and wonders He had shown them. He performed extraordinary deeds before their fathers in the land of Egypt, in the region of Zoan. He divided the sea and led them through. He made the waters stand like a wall. By day, He led them with a cloud, and all night with the light of fire. He split rocks in the wilderness, providing water for them as if from the depths of the sea. He brought streams out of the rock, causing water to flow like rivers. Yet they continued to sin against Him by rebelling against the Most High in the desert. They tested God in their hearts, demanding food to satisfy their cravings. They spoke against God, saying, "Can God provide a table in the wilderness? Behold, He struck the rock, and water gushed forth, streams overflowed. But can He also give bread or provide meat for His people?" Because of this, the Lord's anger burned against them. His wrath kindled against Jacob, and His fury rose against Israel. For they did not believe in God or trust in His salvation. Though He had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven, He rained manna upon them for food and gave them grain from heaven. Man ate the bread of angels, He sent them food in abundance. He stirred up the east wind in the heavens and brought forth the south wind by His power. He rained meat upon them like dust, winged birds like the sand of the sea. He made them fall within their camp, all around their dwellings. So they ate and were filled, for He gave them what they desired. But before they had satisfied their desire, while the food was still in their mouths, the anger of God rose against them. He killed their strongest and struck down the young men of Israel. Despite all this, they still sinned, refusing to believe in His wondrous works. So He brought their days to an end in futility, their years in terror. When He slew them, they sought Him. They repented and earnestly sought God. They remembered that God was their rock, the Most High God, their Redeemer. Yet they flattered Him with their mouths, and they lied to Him with their tongues. Their hearts were not steadfast toward Him, and they were unfaithful to His covenant. But He, being merciful, forgave their iniquity and did not destroy them. He often turned His anger away and did not unleash all His wrath. He remembered that they were but flesh, a passing breeze that does not return. How often they rebelled against Him in the wilderness, and grieved Him in the desert. They turned back and tested God, provoking the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember His power, the day when He redeemed them from the enemy. How He performed His signs in Egypt, His wonders in the fields of Zoan. He turned their rivers into blood, and their streams, so they could not drink. He sent swarms of flies among them, which devoured them, and frogs, which devastated them. He gave their crops to the grasshopper, and the produce of their labor to the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamore trees with frost. He gave over their cattle to the hail, and their livestock to bolts of lightning. He unleashed His burning anger against them, wrath, indignation, and calamity, a band of deadly messengers. He cleared a path for His anger. He did not spare them from death but delivered their lives to the plague. He struck down every firstborn in Egypt, the firstfruits of their strength in the tents of Ham. But He led His people out like sheep and guided them like a flock in the wilderness. He led them safely, and they did not fear. The sea engulfed their enemies. He brought them to his holy land, to the hill country his right hand had acquired. He drove out nations before them and apportioned their inheritance. He settled the tribes of Israel in their tents. But they continued to test and defy God, rebelling against his instructions. They turned away and were unfaithful like their ancestors, becoming as unreliable as a faulty bow. They angered him with their high places and provoked his jealousy with their carved images. When God heard this, he was furious and greatly abhorred Israel. He abandoned the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent where he dwelt among mankind. He allowed his strength to be captured and his splendor to be delivered into the hand of the adversary. He gave his people over to the sword and vented his wrath upon his inheritance. Fire consumed his young men, and their maidens had no wedding songs. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows were not allowed to mourn. Then the Lord awoke as if from sleep, like a warrior overcome by wine. He drove his adversaries backward, he subjected them to everlasting disgrace. Moreover, he rejected the tent of Joseph, and did not choose the tribe of Ephraim. Instead, he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like the heights, like the earth that he established forever. He chose David his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. From tending the ewes with their nursing young, he brought him to be the shepherd of Jacob, his people, and Israel, his inheritance. So David shepherded them with integrity of heart, and guided them with skillful hands.